And behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and besought him greatly, saying, My little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. And Jesus went with him, and much people followed him and thronged him. I'm going to skip down to the 35th verse. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. What we'll take from the text as a topic today is pay no attention to the bad news. Pay no attention to the bad news. This is the story of Jairus and him seeking after Jesus to get him to come heal his daughter. Amen. And the reason why we skipped from the 24th to the 35th verse is that's the story of the woman with the issue of blood that began to seek after Jesus to touch the hem of his garment to get her healing. But we're going to focus on Jairus today. And Jairus, his wording when he got to Jesus intrigued me. It got me to thinking, because when he got to Jesus, he said, My little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. Now, his story, his situation, his problem touched Jesus so that Jesus didn't say anything to him at the time. Jesus heard his story and his need, and Jesus began to go with him to his house. And after Jesus began to go with him, Bishop, the people began to follow Jesus to go to Jairus' house. Now, on the way to Jairus' house, the woman with the issue of blood came up and began to distract the people. She never distracted Jesus, but she distracted the people from looking at Jairus, because they may have been looking at Jairus kind of funny because he was a man of authority. Jairus was a ruler, so they weren't used to a ruler asking, oh God help us here. They weren't used to the ruler asking somebody for some help because they was in need, amen? But what began to happen is Jesus began to go to Jairus' house, and on the way, the woman with the issue of blood just interrupted Jesus for a moment, but then somebody came from Jairus' house. Somebody came from Jairus' house. Now it says, while he yet spake, I'm at the 35th verse, while he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said. Now notice, they didn't just pick out one specific person. When they say certain, that means it was more than one person bringing bad news to Jairus. And what they began to say is, don't trouble Jesus any longer, because your daughter is dead. Now when we think back to the question and the request that Jairus gave Jesus, he didn't ask Jesus to come raise his daughter from the dead. He said, my daughter lieth at the point of death. If you just come and lay your hands on her, she'll be healed. The reason why I said that, Brother Frank, is because we got people that are at our house in our circle that's looking at our situation and they make it worse than what we see it as. And if we listen to what people are saying, we'll believe that the situation is worse than what we requested of Jesus. But Jesus began to do something before Jairus can even address the people that came with the bad news. Jesus answered before Jairus could react. Oh God. Well, what happens Jesus, what happens to us is that when we hear bad news, we react before we let Jesus speak up for us. Too many times the bad news, Brother Bell, it gets us to the point where we react too fast and our reaction doesn't fit our situation. And if we react a certain way, it's going to make the situation worse than what we saw it as to begin with. But Jesus began to do something. The 35th verse says, while he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house certain which said, thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, be not afraid, only believe. Now Jesus, he didn't have to address the people that came with the bad news because they weren't the ones that had the faith. They weren't the ones who needed their faith increased. They weren't the ones that needed their faith to just stand firm. So he went here. He began to talk to the one that had the request. Too many times, we're looking for Jesus to deal with the people that's giving the bad news. We look for Jesus to deal with the wrong people. But you ought to just talk to yourself and say, Jesus, deal with me. I'm the one with the problem. I'm the one with the situation. I don't need you to deal with the people that's talking about me. Help me. But Lord, deal with me that I can help myself. You deal with me that my faith won't fail me. Somebody say, deal with me, Jesus. Too many times we looking for Jesus to address the people when I'm the one that came to Jesus with the problem. Jesus understood that if he talked to anybody else but Jairus' faith would have failed him. Why? Because understand, Jesus had not yet said anything to this man. And the reason why Jesus had to speak to him then is because Jairus stood there and saw the woman with the issue of blood interrupt Jesus going to his house and get her healing. So if Jesus wouldn't have talked to Jairus, he would have been looking like, why in the world did she get her healing and mine is delayed? But look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, just wait your turn. Look at a different neighbor and say, neighbor, just wait your turn. I know you've been requesting some things of Jesus, and it look like he's been blessing everybody around you. It look like the person that just came inside the church doors got their deliverance before you did. But I guarantee you, if you just give Jesus a little bit of time. Tap your neighbor on the shoulder and say, he getting to you. Tap him and say, he gonna get to you. So Jesus turned to Jairus and said, be not afraid, only believe. The reason why he